Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Fitzmaurice from the Central Office, and I'll be your host for today's webinar on the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, supporting sustainable and innovative business solutions. Your microphones and telephones are currently muted to eliminate background noise during the program. We'll take questions at the end of the presentation. To ask a question, type it into the question box on your control panel, or if you have a working microphone or have dialed in, raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your control panel, and I will unmute you. Today's program is being recorded and will be available through WebMQS in the Shared Resources section. And I'd like to thank a couple of people for making today's webinar possibility. Chuck Schwerin, Business Advisor from our Binghamton SBDC, and also Kate McArdle with the Pollution Prevention Institute. So thank you both. And Chuck will go ahead and do the honors of introducing our presenters. Welcome, Chuck.
Good morning. Thanks, Kathy. So early in February, we were visited here in the Binghamton incubator by the director of the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, Chuck Ruffing. And in talking with Chuck about this entity, I thought that this might be a good opportunity for a webinar because it was an organization that I was unfamiliar with. He leads a team of 21 engineers and technical staff and specialists and students, and they deliver pollution prevention information and research to New York State businesses and citizens that we're going to hear about today. So thanks to Kate McArdle, we put together this webinar, and today we are going to be presented by Patricia Donohue and Ava Labuzetta. Trish is a senior pollution prevention engineer and manager of the Sustainable Supply Chain Program, and she provides technical assistance to businesses, including manufacturing, process assessment, supply chain optimization, material and energy balances, and evaluation of environmentally preferable and cost-effective alternatives. That's a mouthful. Ava is also a pollution prevention engineer, and she provides technical assistance to all the business assistance programs. She typically works directly with companies on process assessments and makes recommendations for P2 improvement. We'll refer to, I think, New York State Pollution Prevention Institute as NYS P2I. So I think P2 stands for pollution prevention, if I'm not mistaken. And Ava also conducts research to identify industry-wide solutions for waste reduction and pollution prevention. They're today's presenters, and I understand we may have a panel of luminary experts to assist in answering our questions should they arise. So thanks for presenting. You guys have the floor.
Great. Thank you very much, Chuck and Kathy, for that introduction to the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. Yes, we do shorten our name to just P2I, so when you hear that reference, you'll know that that is our institution. So just quickly for the agenda, we will be giving an overview about RIT. Hopefully most of you are familiar with the Rochester Institute of Technology, but we'll get some fun facts. And a little bit of an overview of the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. And then we will share with you just a couple of our success stories, and then some funding opportunities and resources that we do make available through our institute. And then we will wrap up with questions and answers. So the Rochester Institute of Technology has actually been around a lot longer than many have known to believe. We were founded in 1829. We're a privately endowed co-ed university. We have 9 colleges that focus on career education and experiential learning. And really what that means is we're not just a typical university where we distribute degrees. We actually have something called a co-op program where students have the opportunity to go out into the workplace as part of their educational experience and have paid jobs for a semester or 2 semesters during the course of their education. And they are paid for this. They're not just internships, but they're paid experience opportunities, which really gives them a leg up when they graduate and are pursuing opportunities out in the workforce. being one of the largest private universities in the nation, RIT's first major effort with manufacturing and sustainability, believe it or not, began in 1991. And it's really this focus on manufacturing that we take the student body and those opportunities for their careers and merge these two things together. And as part of that academic learning, there is a professor here, his name is Nabil Nasser, you may have heard of him. He was working on remanufacturing, which is the process of re-engineering components and equipment to extend their useful life. And over the years, Dr. Nasser and his team started working on remanufacturing projects all over the world with auto manufacturers and copier and printer manufacturers, but also the military. And one of the early projects that him and his team were working on involved redesigning and decommissioning Navy ships to allow them to be put back into use instead of just being sent to a scrapyard. So remanufacturing was one of those first type of sustainability efforts that really linked academic and manufacturers together. And so today we have an international distribution of locations for RIT, and the academic side, we're located in Eastern Europe, in Dubai, and China. So to continue with the efforts of industry and academia here at RIT, over the next 25 years, this remanufacturing expertise has grown and expanded to include many sustainability efforts. And you can see that we have now academic programs. The first PhD in sustainability in the nation was started here at RIT. We now have a master's in sustainable systems and a master's in sustainable architecture. So the Golisano Institute for Sustainability was established several years ago and now has over 100 full-time engineers, technicians, and research faculty, and it sponsored students. And it's mostly now located in a building that's about 225,000 square feet, has state-of-the-art facilities with labs and what we call a living laboratory, actually. And the building itself is LEED Platinum. It offers all of these capabilities that you see here, and the areas that we focus on mostly have to do with environmental impact reduction. So the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute is just one of several sister types of departments that are located in the Golisano Institute for Sustainability. But the nice thing about it is that we do have many faculty and staff and technicians that cross over between those departments. So depending upon the type of effort that we have to support manufacturers, we can borrow others from our sister departments, and they have, again, this great depth of knowledge in these different capabilities. So to dive in a little bit more about the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, we are headquartered at RIT, as you can see. We were established 10 years ago. We receive $4 million annually from the New York State Environmental Protection Fund, which is a line item in the state budget. We focus on the reduction of resource consumption, like water and raw materials and energy, and the elimination of waste and materials that have some sort of environmental impact and oftentimes are called toxic. This environmental impact reduction is focused on a few different program areas: on-site technical assistance, research and development. We look at emerging contaminants and green chemistry. We also have a focus on food scrap waste reduction. And we do a lot of outreach and education. So we oftentimes are speaking at conferences. We do training with not just manufacturers, but also out into our communities. And mostly we have a full-time staff of about 15 folks. This map shows our university partners. Hopefully we will hear an announcement soon about our next 5-year contract. We're partnered with Clarkson University, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, Cornell University, and hopefully Binghamton University. Currently, we've been partnered with the University at Buffalo, and so going forward, we're hoping that this will be our structure over the next 5 years. We have over 15 incubators that we work with, and there's the Manufacturing Extension Partnership that we've been partnered with for the last 10 years as well. There are 10 of those located across the state, including Fuse Hub, if you're familiar with them. I believe most of you are. And so we like to work directly with Fuse Hub to do several of their events throughout the year and trying to be identified as a resource to manufacturers and other businesses across the state. Next. We're very, very proud of what we've been able to achieve over the last 10 years. And here are just some metrics. So as of September of last year, we've been able to help over 240 companies with our technical programs. We've been able to provide 38 research and development projects, which have totaled $2.7 million. And that funding is with our university partners to solve industry problems. So one of the features that we really pride ourselves on is that the universities that we are partnered with do have a high engineering and technology focus. And so much of that is applied research that can be utilized currently today and help companies reduce those environmental impacts. We also have a program called our Community Grants Program, in which over $1.5 million has been invested in over 100 communities across New York State with training and education to help those communities reduce their environmental impacts and have a greater understanding of how each and every one of us has a part to play in reducing those impacts. So you can see here that from our technical programs, we have a materials and waste reduction of over 99,000 pounds of non-hazardous waste and over 7 million pounds of hazardous waste. Our water usage reduction has totaled over 100 million gallons of water based on the types of technologies and improvements that we've offered to those companies. And from an energy perspective, which many companies are focused on, their carbon footprint at this point, we've been able to identify energy use reduction of over 15 million kilowatt hours of electricity and 314 million BTUs of natural gas. So pretty impressive numbers over the last 10 years. Our team has certainly grown in the number of people that we've had, so we've been able to accomplish quite a bit. Next. So the next few slides will cover examples of success stories from the Pollution Prevention Institute. So one area that we work with manufacturers on is their supply chain. And oftentimes companies are asked by their customers in these days how well they're doing with sustainability or environmental impacts. Many times a company is asked about what is that carbon footprint, or how much waste are you generating, or how much water are you using? Are you ISO 14001 certified? Do you have any other certifications that are aligned with the industry that we're working in that you can support to enhance the sustainability across the entire supply chain? So we oftentimes do supply chain assessments looking at those customer inquiries and also the suppliers that are providing materials, ingredients, parts, etc. to these manufacturers. Oftentimes there's customer scorecards or questionnaires that these companies need to respond to, and frankly, the reason companies come to P2I is because they don't have an environmental resource in-house. They don't have an environmental manager or someone with this type of expertise. Oftentimes we focus on small and medium-sized businesses and provide this type of assistance so that they can respond to, in this example, customer scorecards. We've seen a really big uptick in ISO 14001 requests, and this is an area where smaller businesses are being asked by their larger global industrial customers whether they are ISO 14001 certified, which looks at their environmental impact and continuous improvement so that they are setting goals and targets and reducing those impacts over time. And so the example that you see here is with a client Acro Industries. They are located in Rochester, New York, and they were one of those companies that is supporting transportation, mostly the aerospace industry, airlines, railroad. And so from that particular industry, they had been asked by several big customers whether they were ISO 14000 certified. And while they were ISO 9000 certified for quality, this was an area that they had thought about but really had not focused on. So we do a gap assessment to try and understand the ISO 14001 standard and how closely they are conforming to it, and what are the things that they need to do in order to get that certification. And so for Acro, they've identified that by getting certified, they have an opportunity of increasing their sales by 10%, increasing their customer base by about 20% perhaps, and may be able to, through the increase in that business, add 10 additional jobs over the next 3 years. Another area that has been a great area of focus is something called zero waste to landfill. So many industries are looking at how they can reduce their waste and stop sending it to landfills, or at least a majority of that. And this is important because we are seeing that across New York State anyway, in the next 2 years, we have a few landfills that will be closing, and there needs to be some other source or opportunity to take care of that waste. But wouldn't it be ideal if these companies could find ways to recycle more, reduce that waste to begin with and not generate it from the start, and work with their suppliers who are providing packaging and other pieces that might be just going straight into a landfill without providing any value or benefit to that manufacturer to begin with. So this is an area where we've really seen another uptick in requests as well. So while the last example talked about companies and how they might be able to grow customers and revenue, this is an area where we accelerate commercialization of green products or processes. And so companies who may be a startup company, or they might be an existing company who has a new product that they would like to get to market, they are creating products that have a reduced environmental impact. So that might be from reduced energy consumption in the use phase of a product as compared to a similar product that's out on the market today, or it might be a life cycle assessment where we're looking at a product and the inputs to that product. What is the environmental impact from those inputs? What about the use phase of that product? And then ultimate disposal of that product. So the life cycle assessment is a key area for companies to understand the overall impact from the entire life cycle of their product. There's also competitive product benchmarking that can be conducted, also looking at the market viability and assessing where that may take this product into the future. So the example we have here is a company called Mikatu. They performed, and we at P2I performed an empirical evaluation of their product called Grid View, and whether their system's accuracy relative to the current industry's performance standards and where this new product might stand against those standards. So the engineers work closely with our partner, Clarkson University, as was mentioned earlier, and the universities really can provide some unique expertise based on the labs and equipment that they have available to them. So in this case, they looked at Grid View and their sensor performance. And they found that the sensor performance had, as you can see there, a 4.6 times improvement in voltage accuracy and an 11.8 times improvement in current accuracy. So the application for this type of technology is for use with the state electric grid to help controllers save energy. And so hopefully Mikatu can get this product into commercialization and out into the industry to be able to be used and find that reduction in environmental impact. A majority of the work that we do at P2I does have to do with helping manufacturers directly with their internal processes and procedures. We oftentimes look at a manufacturer's entire process line. So if they are using a lot of water, for example, or they have a lot of chemical usage and that's generating a lot of waste, we may look at the process and re-engineer that process so that they can reuse the materials or reuse that water, or just overall try and find a way to reduce that impact. But we also work with businesses, and they may not be manufacturers in all instances. The example that you see here is with a golf course located in Monroe County. It's called Locust Hill. And the opportunity that they had here was to reduce the wastewater discharge from going into their surrounded wooded areas. And there was an odor problem that was being generated from this. But golf courses use a lot of water, as you can imagine, for their irrigation purposes. So P2I performed a baseline to determine several different alternatives to address this water use, and also how can they recapture the waters and reduce the amount of odor that was being generated. P2I found that over 90% of that water can be reused through technology that had been implemented at the golf course. And that water savings will certainly save in cost for the company, as well as a reduction in just the overall water that's being consumed. So when we work with manufacturers and businesses in this type of capacity where we're looking at reuse or reduction, we're really focused on a cost savings for those companies as well. So we oftentimes do a return on their investment or a payback period for making these changes and what that cost savings will be for them. We like to focus on making recommendations or implementation solutions that are not going to increase a cost to a company, but rather reduce that overall. So now I'll turn it over to Ava, where she can speak on a very specific program that's focused on food waste and food waste reduction. And it just comes in line with what we were just mentioning before about reducing the overall impact. But this time it's a focus on food, which Ava will describe why that's an important topic and area of focus today. Ava?
Thanks, Trish. So we have seen a large increase in interest regarding food waste reduction in New York lately. And so, as Trish just mentioned, we focused some of our efforts on assisting these types of businesses. So we will work with anyone along the food supply chain, from a food manufacturer through retail and distribution, as well as food service. So whether it's a grocery store or a restaurant. And we also work with those businesses that are then managing the food waste on the back end. So compost facilities, for example, or even organic waste haulers. So we work with any type of food-related business on projects and different challenges related to improving food waste management at those businesses. So that's a pretty large umbrella description of the different types of projects we do. But just a few examples here below, these projects can focus on quantifying food waste at a business, and then identifying opportunities for preventing that food waste from being created in the first place, which is where we always try to focus our efforts, and then also finding diversion outlets for whatever food waste is created after prevention is tackled as well. So that can be things like setting up a food waste collection system in a business, as well as connecting them with other groups around their area that can then pick up that waste and do something beneficial with it. So we assist them in overcoming some of the challenges associated with improving management of food waste, and we also get involved in training and education for businesses, as well as the employees who are handling food on a daily basis. We also do a lot with aggregating the findings from our projects and creating new resources that we post online. So the links you see there at the bottom of the page on the left-hand side will bring you to our food clearinghouse website that houses a lot of these more passive resources for businesses that would like more information on how to get started, but don't necessarily need a full project with P2I. Over on the right-hand side is just an example of one of our more recent projects, which deals with a company that is on the food waste management side of the food supply chain. So this company was a small startup based in New York City that was starting to build up a system for food waste fermentation. The idea here is to take in food waste from surrounding businesses and then on a small footprint in a small building in New York City, which is an advantage over some of the larger types of food waste recycling, such as compost or anaerobic digestion. They're able to take this material in and then convert it into a stable product. So they were interested in understanding how to optimize this pilot scale process before scaling up. And in this way, we were able to help them design an experiment to understand all the variables going into their process and optimize them, and eventually end up finding opportunities for cost savings so that with the optimized process, they will be much more efficient in their scaled up system when they move forward with that. We also looked a little bit at the opportunities for using the output material and did a survey of potential end users to get input on that as well. And now shifting gears a little bit, we'll be talking about a few different grant opportunities through P2I. So these now are more competitive application-based processes where an applicant would apply, have their application scored, and then be awarded funds. So this is one of those examples that's worth mentioning because we're on the cusp of launching this program, although the funds aren't quite available yet. But this is also related to our food waste work here at P2I. So we will be administering a grant program through P2I to fund capital equipment purchases for businesses that generate food waste and want to reduce or divert that food waste from landfill. So we'll be providing funds for up to 44% of reimbursement of those eligible purchases, as long as the applicant meets their waste reduction goal. So more to come on this program, but we're excited to pair this with our project-related work and really be able to provide funds for the whole picture from consulting all through the implementation phase.
Great, thank you, Ava. That was a nice lead-in for our funding opportunities. And another funding opportunity that we have is through our community grants program, which is really an outreach and education program. We fund community organizations, academic institutions, including schools and universities, and municipalities that seek to improve health and environment and the economy through environmental impact reduction. So of the $4 million that we receive annually, as mentioned earlier on, a portion of that supports the community grants program, where typically a nonprofit organization can compete for $20,000 typically to support an outreach or education effort that they're doing in their community. So to date, P2I has funded over $1.5 million, as mentioned earlier, and that has gone to over 100 projects at 73 organizations. So it's a pretty significant opportunity for these nonprofits across New York State who are generally always looking for funding of some sort, and we're glad that we have this opportunity to share that with them. And lastly, we have a funding opportunity for our partner universities doing research and development that focus again on applied research that will lead to near-term solutions for the companies that we work with, keeping them competitive in the marketplace while reducing their environmental footprint. And these projects have been traditionally done at the partner universities of RIT, UB, Clarkson, and RPI, and have funded 38 projects totaling $2.7 million. And the research that is done is typically done by students at these universities in partnership, obviously, with their faculty, but there's oftentimes a manufacturer that the research is partnered with, so that once the research is completed, that manufacturing partner can take advantage of implementing those solutions at their facility or across the industry that they are part of. So with that, we are I'm proud of all of these efforts that we've achieved by our team of approximately 15 people, and they've mostly come from industry as their background. So we have a good understanding of what the challenges are the industry faces on a daily basis, having been there many of us ourselves. And these other areas of expertise that we've mentioned, whether it's food or community grants. And some of our team is here today, so at this point we will certainly welcome any questions that the participants may have. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Here's a question. How does a company typically engage their services, and what is the financial obligation of the company?
So very good question. Companies often come to us through word of mouth or hearing about us from an event or activity. We also do a lot of marketing as well through social media and other means. As far as companies and the financial commitment, typically 90% of a project is covered by the funding that we've received through New York State, and we request typically that companies contribute 10% to the overall cost of the project. So we will estimate based on the tasks and our scope of work for that project. We will estimate the time and materials that it will take for our staff to work through the project and come up with a cost to complete those tasks, and then the company will typically be asked to contribute 10%. And we found that with companies making that small contribution, that they are more apt to implement the changes and continue to work on making those improvements. So we do have a means of negotiating with companies if they are under hardship and they really feel like one of these projects will help them get through some hard times, but they really can't afford that 10% cost share at this time, then sometimes we will waive that under certain circumstances. So we do look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you for that question. We have another one. Can a company partner with a university and use your services to further commercializable research?
So this is Dan Smith, and I'm currently managing the Green Technology Accelerator Center. And typically, we've supported about 40 companies to date that are in the process of developing new technologies and accelerating those to commercialization. So depending on the technology, many times we would support that company with lab resources, funded lab resources, as Trish just mentioned, at typically a 90% level, through one of our partner universities to help evaluate a product, find the gaps, and maybe do some competitive benchmarking and understand where those gaps are and maybe come up with a plan to close those gaps. Many times, our biggest demand on our GTAC program, the Green Technology Accelerator Program, is to provide a company a competitive, independent third-party evaluation of their technology. So our projects are, let's say, typically in the $30,000 to $50,000 range, leveraging that funding toward lab testing. And we would provide reports to the company that they could then reference to use those in an independent sense to promote their product as compared to the current industry baseline. I'm not sure if that totally addresses the question, but it gets the company further down the road faster with commercialization.
Great. Thank you for that answer and that question. And we have another question. How long does it take to do an ISO 14000 evaluation for a small manufacturer, generally speaking? And how much does that particular task cost?
Great question. So generally, an evaluation for ISO 14001 can take anywhere between 4 and 6 months, generally speaking. Oftentimes, our timeline is contingent upon the company's involvement, and companies are very busy these days, so that's why we have some flexibility there. And an evaluation, it really depends on the size of the company and how diverse their operations are. If they are simply a metals manufacturer, meaning that they're converting metals and doing machining type of work, and it's fairly simplistic, then that would be a less expensive type of project versus a company that has multiple activities, multiple process lines. That would be a little bit more intense. So I would say on average, a project for ISO 14001 can vary between $20,000 and $35,000, and 90% of that would be covered through our funding. So a company would really only be asked to pay about $2,000 or $3,000.
Thank you very much. Another question, is there a point person we should tell our advisors and clients to contact if they are interested in exploring projects with you?
So you can certainly reach out to us at the phone number that you see there listed on the screen, or even by email at that email address. And our marketing person or our admin will circulate that inquiry out to the right program manager to then contact the person that would be making the inquiry.
Great, thank you. And another question, are there limits in project costs?
No, there's no limit in project costs. We really, again, scope it out and try to determine the in-depth details. We work with the client and having several conversations. We oftentimes will go out and visit their facility to scope out what the project would look like so that we have a good idea of what our project tasks will be in our proposal. And so it could be as small or as large as the client's need and our capabilities, and which is why we do have our partner universities and the extended resources and engineers from the Golisano Institute for Sustainability so that we can meet those client needs.
And I'm sorry, I did lose my audio for a brief moment there. I hope the attendees did hear. Chuck, were you able to hear everything that was just said?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay,
No
super. Excellent. Thank you for that. And does anybody else have any questions? Is a partner institution expected to contribute financially?
No, our partner universities are not expected to contribute financially. They are contracted through P2I, and for their services, we then provide the funding to them to cover their expenses for conducting the project.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions? I don't see any others coming in, so we can go ahead and wrap things up. Of course, if you do think of a question after the webinar, the contact information is right there. So I do want to go ahead and thank everybody for presenting today. Thank you, Ava and Patricia and Kate, for arranging this, and also Chuck. And thank you, everybody, for attending. And please do fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. We do value your feedback. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.